Welcome to the Gardenangelists, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. Good afternoon, Dee.
Hi there, Carol. Is it hot enough for you today?
Nope, it is not hot at all. 86.
Ah, well, there you go. It is 99 degrees in Oklahoma.
It's going to be that hot later this week because your weather tends to travel east and sometimes reaches me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to send it on. Hopefully it'll get cooler here. I don't mind the 90s, but when you get in the hundreds, it's not as much fun. So we have exciting stuff to talk about today, but I understand you have a quote for us.
I have a quote to get us started before we dive into our flower. You ready?
I am ready.
This is Nathaniel Hawthorne. Happiness is a butterfly, which when pursued is always just beyond your grasp, but which, if you will sit down quietly, may alight upon you.
Well, that's just cute.
It is. I like that quote. Reminds us to sit quietly.
Yeah, that's nice. What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about a couple of native flowers. The first one I'm going to talk about is one that is blooming now. It's called Indian pinks, or Spigelia marilandica, because they first discovered in Maryland, but it is native throughout the eastern United States. And I want it in my garden, and I don't have it.
And it was moving here about a month ago, and I do have it in my garden. And the reason I have it in my garden is because my friend Kevin Gregg, I was at Bustani Plant Farm, and there were these little tiny plants in these little tiny containers. And he said, Dee, you have to grow this plant. And I thought, they're just little green plants in a little container. This is about 8 years ago. I am so glad that I took him up on it. Since then, I've added several over the years.
Well, I've been looking for that plant, and I finally mail ordered it. And I got 2 little 3-inch containers that look like a little green plant. So they're on my front porch where I remember to water them a couple of times a day because it's so dry. If you put them out in the garden and then you forget, they'll just be gone.
Yeah, they don't have enough bulk to keep themselves going. So, since they aren't blooming, when will you put them in the fall?
I'll put them in more towards the fall when it starts to cool down a little bit because
Yeah.
I paid a king's ransom for them.
Yes, they are not cheap. But they are so pretty, and they attract hummingbirds. And they're just a really great plant. They don't bloom a long time, but while they do, everyone stops in your garden and goes, "What is that plant?" That's the kind of plant they are.
Right. We should tell people that it's got a red flower.
Yeah, red and yellow.
And so that's why it attracts hummingbirds. And it likes a sun or shade, although in Oklahoma, probably a little bit more toward the shade. Well-drained soil. Should make a nice clump once it gets established.
It does, because mine are established. I have nice clumps of it.
And I just read that Walter's Gardens is coming out with a name variety called Little Redhead. So that should put more out on the market for everybody, which is good.
Right, because sometimes, especially if they're not easy natives to get started, it is hard to find enough of them to put them in your garden. It depends on the native plant. And I think Indian pinks need better press.
They do. And I think Walter's Gardens will probably do that with their name variety. And they are vegetatively propagating this. So it's not from seed. And by that, they are probably, because it's a big wholesale grower, they're probably doing tissue culture to make sure that they all come out basically the same. They could be doing divisions. They could be doing cuttings. But I would guess they're doing tissue culture. But I don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure. One thing I hope is that the new one, Little Redhead, has nectar like the original native so that hummingbirds still like it. And I like the name, though. I think the name's great. And we can just briefly talk about the fact that when you grow something from a seed strain, you're going to get a great deal of variety. And I think in our next podcast, we talk about a flower that is from a seed strain. In fact, we talk about 2 flowers from that. And this is a flower that is vegetatively propagated. And so that means what you just said. It either cuttings or it's tissue cultured or, other ways. Root, you can do it by division, but big companies don't usually do division. So Indian pinks are pretty. I have several pictures of mine. We will put them on the internet.
And I have 2 seedlings. And another thing, Dee, I went over to Columbus, Ohio last week to a regional GardenCom meeting. We went a lot of great places, but at the end of the day, we ended up at this really, really cool grower/retail place called Groovy Plant Ranch. And I was just over the moon they had succulents and cactus, but they had all kinds of perennials. And I won't tell you what I bought. I bought 9 plants. But I got up the next morning and I thought, oh my gosh, I should have asked if they had Indian pinks, because if any place had it, they probably did. But you know how you get all kind of like, oh my God, this is a groovy plant ranch, and it was groovy. And
yeah.
So I'm going to have to make a list on my phone or carry around a little card that says, Carol, these are the things you are looking for when you go to cool plant places, because you just kind of go spazzy trying to see it all, and then you forget.
You got too excited, didn't you?
I got, I was overly excited by it all. I was with 2 other people, so I couldn't really just fill the car.
No, you couldn't. But too bad there weren't some Indian pinks coming home with you. You could use more than 2. But I was going to say, not only put it on your phone as a list, but before you go to some place like the Groovy Plant Ranch, tell Siri to give you a notice when you get there to look at said note. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good idea. Yeah. Tell your phone to remind you when you get to a Groovy Plant Ranch. Which, if you're in the Columbus area and you are into gardening, if you do not go to that place, you're not gardener. You are not gardener if you don't go there. It was really neat.
I bet it was neat. So we have a second, because we didn't think we'd talk too long on Spigelia. We thought we'd talk about a second plant, and that's good old butterfly weed, which is Asclepias tuberosa. Asclepias. It's Asclepias tuberosa. It is a milkweed. And I think it's too bad that milkweeds are called milkweeds, because I think they'd get better press if they were called milk flowers. Every time we call something a weed, like sneezeweed or milkweed, people think they're weeds, and so they try to get rid of them, which we need.
That's right. Right, or call it butterfly flower. Yeah, but I'm impressed by your ability to say Asclepias.
Well, I screwed it up the first time, but yes, the second time I got Asclepias.
You can remember Asclepias because back, I think, in World War II, the kids used to collect all the milkweed fibers. When the seeds of a milkweed open up, they're just full of fibers. They used to collect that to use, I think, for lining coats and for pillows and stuff, because all the cotton and things like that were being used for the war effort. So they would collect all this. So just remember, sleep with Asclepia, and you'll remember how to say it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. Man, they must have had a lot of milkweeds back then. Now they're begging people to grow them. But back then they grew them. They just grew all the time because they're native. So butterfly weed has wonderful orange flowers, which my friends at Oklahoma State would love just because they're orange. And it's a good plant. It's native to much of the United States. It's actually quite beautiful. And it is not my monarch's favorite plant to lay their seeds on. They'd rather lay them on some other Asclepias, but they do lay them on here too, and they will eat them. They will eat butterfly weed, but I would say it's not their absolute favorite.
Right, and then we should say, and that's why you grow milkweed, for the monarchs and other butterflies. So what's the milkweed that your butterflies, the monarchs, really like in Oklahoma?
Well, in Oklahoma, early on, I think that they like Asclepias viridis, which means green milkweed. It's native to Oklahoma, as best I can remember. And then they also like Asclepias asperula, which is antelope horns. But they also really, really love tropical milkweed. And if you can get seeds to tropical milkweed, you can grow it in Oklahoma for monarch butterflies. And the truth is also all of these milkweeds do really, really well, including swamp milkweed, which I forgot to mention. Swamp milkweed Asclepias incarnata, right?
Right.
Isn't that incarnata?
Right.
Okay. It's very popular with the butterflies, all butterflies, bees. They love that plant. So milkweeds are not just for monarchs. The monarch larvae love them, but adult butterflies, lots of bees, lots of wasps, all different kinds of pollinators love Asclepias.
And I have the Asclepias tuberosa, which is just the butterfly weed, as you say. And it's not a very tall plant. It's only about like a foot or so tall, beautiful orange flowers. But the swamp milkweed, I have that, and it has pink flowers, and it's more like 3 or 4 feet tall. And it self-sows a little bit, but I don't mind. And I just kind of let it go. And to me, it was much easier to establish swamp milkweed in my garden, even though it's not swampy. It would grow in a swampy location than it was the regular butterfly weed.
Okay, so what's interesting about that is that in Oklahoma, pink swamp milkweed, it does okay, but sometimes it has a little trouble because it gets really dry here some years. And then those years it has a little bit of trouble. I grow mine with drip irrigation. I would say it is a short-lived perennial that reseeds. On the other hand, regular old butterfly weed, the first Asclepia tuberosa, it grows everywhere you don't want it to. You know what I'm saying? Like it migrates around the garden. You can plant it in a certain spot and think, I'm going to have orange flowers there. That'll look great with that purple plant. Well, the tuberosa type decides where it's going to grow for you, and it'll just move itself around.
So far, it has not moved around in my garden, but I will admit that it's only been here about 3 years, and it's just really feeling like it's getting established where it's at.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of time to get them to kind of take off. But once they do, you're right, you'll just end up with them wherever. But there are tons of perennials like that in our gardens. So I don't mind.
I don't either. I grow kind of a prairie garden now, and it doesn't matter to me so much that things move themselves around. I did start growing Asclepias viridis, the green milkweed, for the first time this year. I bought it at the Tulsa Master Gardener's plant sale in the spring, and I did that because I wanted an early source for butterflies that are coming up from Mexico. So I grew it in a place it's not the easiest place to grow, and we'll see how it does.
Well, I'm going to have to check out green milkweed to see if it is hardy enough. I'm assuming hardy enough for Indiana, because it's like, I'm going to add that to my garden. Then I'll have 3 milkweed.
Oh, cool. You might like it. If people do decide to grow tropical milkweed, I'm just going to make a caveat. There's a lot of stuff on the web that says that you should not grow it, and just do the research for yourself and do it at trusted sources like the Illinois Extension Service or the Oklahoma State Extension Service, different places. Look at those. Don't just go by articles that are written on the internet, because there's a lot of discussion about tropical milkweed and where it should be grown, where it shouldn't be grown, what it does for monarch butterflies, et cetera, et cetera.
Very good. The other thing I should say is swamp milkweed in my garden, and I probably could go out there right now, it always ends up with what's called milkweed beetles on it, which they're all over it. They do not cause a problem. Don't worry about them. It's also going to have aphids on it. Again, don't worry about it. It's not going to kill the plant. It's just they like it. And so you're just being a good gardener to just let those flowers grow, let the bugs enjoy them. It's not just butterflies, but all kinds of other bugs enjoy them, and let them enjoy them.
Yeah. You might be irritated by the aphids and the ants feeding the aphids, or actually harvesting. I said that backwards. They're harvesting nectar from the aphids. Here's the thing. Sometimes aphids overwhelm some of the milkweeds in my garden, but I have to make the decision. Is it worth it to wash them off with water, or do I just leave them there? And here's why. Hopefully a ladybug will come along and eat said aphids, right?
Yep.
If I leave them there?
Yep.
If I wash them off, there's chance that I'm washing off monarch eggs or lacewing eggs, because lacewings also like milkweeds. Milkweeds are such a great plant for all kinds of insects.
Right. So I say, put the milkweed in your garden. It's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be a host to a bunch of insects, and you're going to be a better person for it by leaving them alone. That's what you're going to be.
Yeah, I think you are too. I think you just don't need to worry about it. Just make sure it gets enough water here and then don't worry about it and don't worry about it not looking perfect. I was thinking about that in the garden yesterday when I was out there. There's a lot of stuff right now when it's gotten hot that is not perfect.
Oh, heavens,
right?
no.
And that's one thing gardening teaches you. Yeah, gardening teaches you not to be a perfectionist. The first few years, you are really, really trying to have everything look just so. But after you've been a gardener a long time, you think, you know what, I'll just plant another plant to hide those bare legs of the rose. Or I'll just go over there and try something different. And right now, all of my peonies have botrytis, so I cut them all back to the ground and threw away the leaves. So everybody's garden has issues. Just garden and enjoy yourself.
It is not for perfectionists.
It is not. So are we moving on to our vegetable?
We are. You want to hear the quote?
I do.
This one is, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." And that,
I know that quote.
that is from the book of Matthew in the Bible. And I always think about that quote when I'm out in the vegetable garden and I'm picking green beans or cucumbers or squash or tomatoes or whatever I'm doing out there. It's like the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few because people are like, can I have some? Can I have some? Of course, I do give them some. But today
that's sweet of you.
Today we're talking about cucumbers.
Yay, cucumbers.
So I got a text from my niece the other day.
Oh, yeah?
She sent me a picture and she says, "Why are my cucumbers turning out round and not like long cucumbers?"
You said, "Hey, what variety did you grow?"
Well, it's not necessarily the variety because she said she got some normal shaped cucumbers. And I kind of looked it up and I think it's two problems. I think it's hot, and I think that
it is hot.
We got dried out, and it's not getting a consistent amount of, we're not getting a consistent amount of moisture or rain. And so if they have an inconsistent rain on the cucumbers, that can cause them to be misshapen. And then the other thing is, it is possible if they're not pollinated that they don't grow the way they should. But I think around here, it's the fact that it stopped raining.
That's interesting because I have never had cucumbers grow round. Now I've had them like be really thin in the middle, because the blossom end, they're too thin down there and then fatter at the stem end. I've had them do that before. Maybe that's what she meant by being round. But there is a round cucumber out there. We've both grown it.
Yes. You're talking about, which one are you talking about?
The lemon cucumber.
I don't think I've grown lemon cucumber.
You've never grown lemon cucumbers? They're little round balls and they look like lemons with stripe?
Nope.
Oh, you should grow those. Those are good.
Oh, okay.
And they're cute.
Something else for me to grow. Actually, my cucumbers, I'm growing, we should tell people there's bush type and vining type. And vining type definitely needs a support to keep the cucumbers up off the ground. Some people will put like an angled, I guess, fencing or whatever to grow up an angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I always grow the bush type because I don't have time for all that vining stuff. But my bush cucumbers are just sitting there. They are not growing very big. And I'm like, what's wrong? I don't know if it's a fertility problem. I don't know if the seed lacked vigor, because sometimes if you use old seed, it might germinate, but then the plant doesn't have the vigor. And I did use old seed.
That could be
so it's got a lot of blooms on it, but they're not very big plants. So I got to water again, and then I'm going to hit them with a bunch of fertilizer, see what happens.
And you could also go out there with a paintbrush and just, hand pollinate a few of them to see if that's what's wrong. Maybe you don't have enough bumblebees.
Well, I haven't got any fruit forming yet at all. They're just starting to flower.
No, I mean the flowers. Oh, you probably only have male flowers then.
Yeah.
You probably don't even have female flowers yet. Boy, yours are behind.
They're very behind.
They're really behind. I've got one cucumber on my cucumber plant this year. I grew some from seed, and then I grew some that I actually bought a plant, and it was an Asian type. And that cucumber was really good, and I can't tell you the name of it right now. I bought it when I went to the Tomato Man's daughter. I wish I'd bought some more. But since I caged my tomato plants, I just grew it up the side of the cage.
That would work.
And it did fine.
That would work.
Yeah, it worked. So shall we talk about, let's talk about regular cucumbers versus burpless.
So,
because my husband won't eat cucumbers.
Yeah, a lot of people will say that cucumbers, it upsets their stomach or they burp a lot after they eat it. And there is a compound in cucumbers called cucurbitacin.
That sounds good. Yeah, cucurbitacin.
And it's what causes cucumbers to be bitter. If they get like really too big, they turn bitter. And that's what causes people to have burp after they eat cucumbers. So for those people, there are burpless varieties where they've bred varieties that have much less of that substance in them. And also, if they would peel off the skins, they would probably enjoy them more. Because the compound tends to accumulate more in the skin.
And I think, if I remember my stuff right, that the ones that have less that are burpless are more susceptible to cucumber beetles. I'm just almost positive that's true.
That
so
could be.
So if you grow the type that are burpless, you're going to have more trouble with cucumber beetles. But, you can just grow the other ones and you can take off the skin and you can also pickle them a little bit. If you have somebody who can't eat them fresh, you can pickle them a little bit by putting them in vinegar, and some people use oil too, and a little bit of water. And it's just a fresh cucumbers. It's not like making pickles. And I actually have the recipe on Red Dirt Ramblings. So if you search on there, you can look up my grandmother's cucumbers and onions. And a really good way to eat them. And I've started also pickling them by using a little bit of rice vinegar and a little bit of spice, like the Asian spices.
Uh-huh.
And it makes a really good topping for the top of your, like a dish, like an Asian dish. And I learned that by using some recipes. So my husband can eat them that way, and he started eating them. There's also a theory that English cucumbers are a little bit less burpy too.
Right.
But
and there are a lot of varieties to try. And I tell people the thing about cucumbers, it is one of those things that when you grow your own cucumbers, to me, they taste so much better than anything you could ever buy at the store. And you're going to be surprised because they don't grow with all that wax on them that they put on them before they put them in the grocery store. They wax them up. That's disgusting. Mm-hmm. But they don't grow with the wax, and they really taste good.
They do. They taste completely different. It's like a tomato. They taste completely different than they do if you actually buy them in the store. So there you go.
And even though my niece is having trouble getting hers to be other than balls, and mine are just sitting there not growing very well, trust us when we say cucumbers are actually fairly easy to grow from seed. You just need a sunny location. You need, just good vegetable garden dirt. And as with most things, fertilize them when they've started to flower. That's when you should start fertilizing them so that it's not all vegetative growth. And then keep picking them, because if you have a good cucumber year, and sometimes you have a good year and sometimes you don't. But in a good year, you'll never keep up with even like 2 plants. You just keep picking and picking and picking and picking.
Yeah, they're like squash. They can be really, really prolific.
Right. And when you get one that's overgrown and starts to turn yellow, remember, hide it in the compost pile so nobody sees that you missed one.
So while we've been talking about this, I looked up the Connecticut Agricultural Experimental Station.
Uh-huh.
And I think I had it backwards, actually. I think that the ones that are burpless are actually, cucumber beetles are stimulated to feed by the chemical cucurbitacin, and that chemical can make them bitter or indigestible to people. Those advertised as non-bitter or burpless are not as attractive to the beetles. So I had it backwards.
Yay, then I'm happy. I usually just end up with the burpless, and I don't know why.
Well, now we know, and I'm glad I looked it up, because I thought it was the other way.
Right. And so, listeners, that's the joy of the podcast. We can't really go back and change it, so you got to listen to the whole thing to make sure that we figure it out and we eventually get it right.
Here's the thing. I should just not say stuff off the cuff. That's what I should not do.
Oh, yeah, but that makes it fun.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
So that's enough about cucumbers because now I'm hungry and I don't have cucumbers to go pick, which I normally would right now. So maybe I'll go to the farmer's market on Saturday. There surely will have a bunch there.
Oh, I hope so. So you want to talk about our dirt?
Let's talk about the dirt. You got a quote. Go for it.
I have a quote. Oh, to be in England now that April's here, and whoever wakes in England sees some morning unaware that the lowest boughs in the brushwood sheaf round the elm tree bole are in tiny leaf, while the chaffinch sings on an orchard bough in England now. Now that comes from a really, really long poem by Robert Barrett Browning. Or is it Robert? No, it'd be just Robert Browning because Elizabeth's his wife.
Right.
Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Anyway, Robert Browning, everybody talks about, oh, to be in England now. And of course, that's written about April. I don't want to be in England in April. It's a little chilly, but I do like England in June.
Oh, you do, and you went, you brat.
I did, and you could have gone with me, but you chose not to, so sorry about that. You need to come next time. I've been to England 3 times, and it's probably my favorite place for garden travel.
Oh, yeah. How many times you been?
3.
Brat.
3. I am a brat. The first time I went, we went to London and surrounding London, and that's when I got to see Sissinghurst. And then the next time I went to Yorkshire, which I adored. And then this time we went to East Anglia, which has Beth Chatto's garden in it. And that I wanted to see Beth Chatto's garden, and I wanted to go to the RHS Hampton Court Flower Festival. They just recently changed the name from Flower Show to Flower Festival. And I went to Beth Chatto's garden, and that was the whole reason I went on this trip, because you and I read a book that was with Beth Chatto and Christopher Lloyd.
Right, the letters they exchanged.
Dear Friend and Gardener.
Yes.
And we loved that book. And that book had a lot of influence on what we grew, and also just on, we did a whole series of blog posts a long time ago based upon that with Marianne Newcomer.
Right, we did. And I would say that Beth Chatto, and I've never been to her garden, that Beth Chatto is a famous English gardener. And what she's really famous for is her dry garden, because she had some very challenging environmental conditions. And rather than try to force all the plants to grow as she wished them to, she sought out plants that would grow in the climate that she had, which is a great lesson for every gardener to learn.
Mm-hmm. It's somewhat hot in summer, and East Anglia is drier than some other parts of England. But here's the deal. East Anglia is not that dry. They think it's dry, but it's not dry like Oklahoma dry, although this year was different than normal. But I was going to say about her, I saw her famous gravel garden, and I'll post that on our Instagram and also on our Facebook page. What I found interesting was that she developed this type of gardening where she would not have to water this section of her garden. She waters some of the others, or she did water some of the other sections. Her staff does now. She's considered a horticultural hero in England, and she was honored there at the Flower Festival this year. And the gravel garden, it is made up of a lot of very interesting plants, including a lot of American prairie natives.
Right. I do remember looking in a British gardening magazine and seeing fleabane, which is a weed around here, just pops up everywhere.
It is.
That they were growing fleabane, like it's a desirable perennial plant to put in your garden. So I always leave a little fleabane hanging around just because I'm like, a little British for you.
There you go. And also the bees love it, so that's a good reason too. So while I was at Beth Chatto's garden, along one side of the cafe, because most of these big gardens have cafes, they had a theater or a stage of pelargoniums, which you and I talked about pelargoniums about 2 episodes ago.
2 or 3, yes.
And I fell down the pelargonium rabbit hole badly.
Oh, tell us about that, Dee. And a theater, we should tell people a theater is, you built a theater to put pelargoniums on. And it's just sort of like benches or steps that are kind of built up so you can display them top row, middle row, bottom row, put all your pelargoniums in fancy pots. And
well, these are in terracotta pots, so I wouldn't say they're super fancy. And I usually don't grow things in terracotta in Oklahoma, but I don't know, they just needed to be in terracotta pots because that's how Beth's group did it. And now I'm on the hunt for little chalkboard markers to go on there too, because that's how Beth's people had them. And I mean, I really became kind of obsessed with it. So last Saturday, Bill and I built the stage for the pelargoniums, and we put them right next to my greenhouse. And I'm going to see if they can stay there. I'm going to look at them this afternoon and make sure they're not burning up in our present heat, because like I told you, it's 99 degrees here. If they are, I'm going to move them over to a shadier spot until fall comes. But right now, they look really good, and that's all on my personal. All my pelargonium journey is on my personal Instagram.
And so when you say you fell down this rabbit hole, you should fess up to our listeners that you go searching on the web and you found all kinds of exotic kinds of pelargoniums to buy. And I looked at the one site and I tell you what, I mean, I could have been click and had me a bunch of pelargoniums too, but I don't know that I have a good place to overwinter them. So all these are going in your greenhouse this winter, right?
My greenhouse are in an east-facing window. I have so many now because I bought 8 more. I bought 8 more because I fell in love with the angel types. And the angel types are usually a cross between the Martha Washington types, which are called regals in England, and the scented or species type pelargoniums, geraniums. So I love scented geraniums. And so these are a mix between the scented and the other type. And they have little pansy faces. I couldn't resist.
Pansy faces. You're getting me all kind of excited because I looked at that page and I thought, I need to shut down this page. I need to not order. And the prices were not that high. I mean, it was just like...
No, they were $6 a piece.
$6
a piece. They were really cheap.
So how big a plant did you get for $6?
A 4-inch, 4-inch pot. And some of the plants were quite big. The ones that are much more robust growing, they were pretty big. But then there was one plant that was really, really small. And so I have to say that the place where I bought them was Gardenangelists.com, and which is the species of both geranium and pelargonium. And so she carries, I can't tell you how many different kinds. And she packed these plants as if they were her babies, and she wanted them to have the safest journey here ever.
Right.
So I have to give her a shout out.
We're going to put a link to that website on our show notes so that people can see where Dee fell down the rabbit hole. Not that anybody else has fallen down a rabbit hole.
It was a big rabbit. Might.
Yeah.
You just never know.
It's dangerous down there. It's dangerous to go places and see plants.
It is, because a lot of times you can't grow those plants in your own, in your own place. So, but these I can. I've grown them a long time, so I knew I could grow.
And I have a place for a theater. I wonder, but I get nervous about overwintering them. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if I can enable you some more.
It wouldn't take.
But really and truly, you need to come to England. I mean, come on now.
All right.
Next time I go.
All right. Let me think about it. That was pretty emphatic. Let me think about it.
Yeah, because you should tell everybody the truth. Why do you not want to fly to England?
Because you have to fly over a large body of water.
Yeah, it's nighttime. You can't see it. You don't even know it's there.
Oh, well, I could pretend I'm flying over land. I'll get there one day.
Exactly.
I'll get there one day.
You need to.
There's a lot of gardens here in the United States that I need to see first. Ha, ha, ha.
We've seen a whole bunch of them too, haven't we?
We have. All right. So before we keep talking about...
We have news.
We have news.
You need to share our news of where we can be found.
We have just gotten listed on Stitcher. So if you use Stitcher to listen to podcasts, you can listen to us on Stitcher now, which, Dee, does it make sense to tell people that are listening to us on iTunes right now, potentially? We're over on Stitcher.
No, it makes sense because people might be listening to us on their computer.
Yes.
On the regular website. And so this way we can also tell them about Stitcher.
Right. And then there's another site called TuneIn, which I think is related to Google's Alexa and all that. So you could tell Alexa, hey, cue up the Gardenangelists podcast, and they should be able to find us, which is really cool.
Exactly. That is really cool.
So listeners, there you go. You can find us now on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, maybe a couple of other places, Buzzsprout. And you can also find us as the Gardenangelists on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then you can email us at thegardenangelists@gmail.com. And then, of course, you can find Dee and I, Dee's at reddirtramblings.com. Go there, and that'll take you to all her social media. Come to maydreamsgardens.com, and that'll take you all my social media. How's that, Dee?
You did a good job. It's been great chatting with you over the garden fence.
I enjoyed it. Now I got to go look up some pelargoniums. Bye now.
Bye.